Welcome to EndoEmpower episode 8. I cannot believe that we're moving on so quickly. We haven't done one of these in a couple of months, but I have a new face with me today. This is Kendall. She is our
Hi.
newest board member. She came on a month ago.
Yeah, about a month ago.
Yeah. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and she's going to tell you about who she is.
All right. Thanks, Liz. I'm super excited to join the board for Endo Forward Foundation. I feel like I happened upon it at the perfect time in my recovery after my second surgery, and it's been such a near and dear organization to my heart since then because I see that, Liz has a huge heart and all the other board members do as well, and they work tirelessly. So I was more than thrilled to be welcomed into helping out with that. I was diagnosed with endometriosis in 2018 through a laparoscopic surgery, but ablation was performed. So I didn't really get any relief. And since then, I was searching for the perfect surgeon, just in hopes that I could start new, start fresh. And I found a wonderful surgeon. I was connected with a wonderful pelvic floor PT. I've been, I've just been expanding my tool belt since I guess the beginning of December last year. So it's been a great experience. I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it.
We love having you here. Kendall is an amazing advocate for this community, for people with endo. She has such a big heart. And you were one of the first names that came up when we were sitting down thinking like, who's going to be the next person to join us in our mission? And
Aww.
we just knew that you would be such a great fit. I was so anxious to ask you because I was like, please don't say no.
Yeah, I was like, I can't say no.
It's like a first date. You want to like ask, but then you're like, but if they reject me, then I'm going to be sad.
Exactly.
Well, we are going to be talking about a heavy topic today because September is Suicide Awareness Month. And before we hit record, Kendall and I were chatting about some statistics that I'll go over here in just a minute. And we were talking about how there's this preconceived notion that you can't die from endometriosis. And endo isn't like cancer where you're going to get it and then you have a couple months to live and then there isn't really any treatment and the end of the road comes. It's more so that there's all these outside influences that can really drive that end of time for somebody. And one of those is the struggle with mental health, right? So you have like the physical aspect where endo can attack a major organ and really wreak havoc on your body. It can cause your lungs to collapse if you have thoracic endo or endo in your lungs. And there have been community members who have passed away in the last year or two from situations with collapsed lungs because that becomes a medical emergency. But then you have the whole other aspect where endometriosis and the life that it leaves you with can really take you down a dark road, and it can lead people to do things that you wouldn't think that somebody might do. You might think, oh, they were such a happy person, and then one thing leads to another. And we want to bring awareness to that post-op blues are really real. Living with a chronic condition is really real. Living with chronic pain is really real. And there's just not enough awareness drawn to it. And so we want to be those that stir the pot in a sense to say, hey, we really need to talk about this more. I really hope that if you're listening to this, you feel less alone if you're going down this dark road, because from experience as somebody who's been there for the last year and a half, I can tell you that it is dark and it is hard, but there are people here that love you. And I wish I could give you all a hug because life is hard. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yes. I've definitely also had my own struggles with mental health.
Mhm.
Um, and before I found Endo Forward, I was in a very dark place. I felt very lonely and alone. But just being able to embrace the fact that there's a whole community of people that know exactly how you're feeling, even though their walk is unique to them and their life, there's still just, you don't even have to necessarily say any words for this community to know how you're feeling.
That is
It's an
so true.
unspoken, yeah, it's an unspoken camaraderie. So I would say that if you're listening to this podcast, just, you know, lean into that, lean into the people that get it, and focus on that and know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. No matter how long and dark and deep that tunnel feels in the moment, there will always be a light. And
Yeah.
we are more than happy to serve as that light and hold that hope until you can do it yourself.
That is so true. Like you talking about that, I just, you know how you come up with like these mental images in your head, and I just envision us like running down this tunnel with like a flashlight and being like, we got you here. There's a flashlight. We're gonna like lead you out the other end because, oh, I'm tearing up. I knew this was gonna be a hard podcast for me to talk about because we've all been there at some point in time, and we know what it's like, and we know what it's like to be alone because I created F because I didn't feel like there was any resource like this in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for me. And I created it with like every bit, like putting every puzzle piece together that I felt like I needed. And so we want to be that for you so badly. So that was a really good thing to add because it really got me like on that like image, like, let's go.
Yeah, me too. That's how I imagine it as well.
Yeah.
Is we've got our flashlights ready. And
Yeah.
if it needs to be one of those big construction lights, we'll get one too.
I love it. I love it so much. Well, I want to go over these statistics because I always want to bring everything back to science and studies and factual information. We're really big on facts. And I think that this also adds another level of importance. I hope that it's eye-opening for you to understand the severity of how many people are struggling, because I really want you to share this podcast. I want you to talk about it. I want this to be a vessel for you to reach out to others in your life and really explain to them what people with chronic illness and people with endo and people with chronic pain go through so that you can start these conversations. And I say this so often to so many people that you would be shocked how many people in your life are struggling with chronic pain or struggling with endometriosis-like symptoms, and they just don't have the words for it, or they've been told that it's normal their whole life, maybe like you have, and they don't know how to talk about it. And so it's really important that us as a community start opening up these conversations with people that we think we might be dismissed by, or we think maybe isn't struggling because they're not talking about it. We have all been there at one time. Remember your story and share, because you don't know who you're going to start conversations with. So,
Knowledge is power.
oh, for real. So much. So in the Journal of Psychosomatic Obstetrics and Gynecology, they did a study in 2017, and it said that 87% of people reported symptoms of depression. And that study was centered around chronic pain, infertility, and the quality of life decrease that endometriosis causes. That's a big number. In 2020, that same study did another study, and it said that 25% of people experience symptoms of suicidal ideation. That's a really big number as well. And then these are just general studies from several journals that have been published out there. They all seem to have very similar numbers. But people with chronic pain are 2 to 3 times more likely to attempt suicide than those in the general population that don't struggle with chronic pain on a daily basis. And then people who have chronic pain are 2 times more likely to die by suicide than people who do not have chronic pain.
That's profound.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know that before I started doing the research to be able to prepare for this podcast that I would have said 87% of people struggle with depression from symptoms of endometriosis. I guess I know that it's a large number, but 87% just sounds, I don't know, it sounds really big.
Yeah, it does. And I think it also plays into the fact that when you have any sort of chronic condition, I think you feel very alone. So it's hard to imagine that there are other people out there that are mentally struggling, because I feel like so many of us are taught, don't show your hurt, whether that be mental or physical. We're taught to hide it, or we're going to be viewed as weak. And so it's really difficult to conceptualize the fact that there are 87% of people with this chronic condition that struggle with depression, because we don't show it to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we need to, walk around acting like our lives are ending, but I do think it's important to be honest with the people that are able to help you hold that weight that you're feeling, because there are people out there.
Yeah.
And I think if someone were to ask us, how are we doing? Like a safe person were to ask us, how are we doing? And we were honest, and then they were honest back, it would empower us to feel not just connected to each other, but connected to the world in general, because that would just set off a domino effect of people being real and honest and open and raw with each other.
That is so true. I think as a society, how often do we run into somebody that we know, or you get to work and the first question is, how are you? Like, how's it going? How are you doing today? And our gut instinct reaction is to go, I'm fine. It's okay. I'm okay. I remember the first time that my friend asked me that, and my answer was, yeah, I'm not good. And I think it kind of like, it takes people by surprise and they're like, oh, what's wrong? Right? Like, because it's not a normal response. As a society, I feel like we're so trained to say like, oh, I'm fine. I'm good. You don't want to ever put your worries or troubles on anybody else.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think we do have to be careful with who we share ourselves with,
Yeah.
because not everyone has the capability. And I think it's important to respect not only ourselves in that situation and our hearts, but also them and their hearts, because it is a back and forth
Yeah.
type of thing. It takes two people in a conversation. But I do wish that we didn't have the culture of being fearful to share how we're feeling in a safe space.
Right.
Because
Right.
I know for sure, like me at work, I have a whole team that I'm leading.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have to be everything for everybody all the time, even on high pain days.
Sure.
And, I was going about my work, and I was in a really high pain day. And one of my sweet team members was like, are you okay? You
Oh,
don't have as much energy as you usually do. Because usually I'm just like, hey, what's up? Blah, blah, blah. It's going to be a great day. Happy Friday. I say
yep.
Friday and Saturday because no one wants to work the weekends, but I always try to make light of it.
I love
Um, but there was like this small internal battle within myself. Like, she obviously can tell I'm not feeling like my normal self.
Mhm.
So maybe I should tell her, because I'm always telling them, be honest with me when you're not feeling well, because I'm here to come alongside you and
Right,
support you and help you so you feel successful.
right.
But then I'm like, well, I'm supposed to be the strong one. I'm supposed to be leading this team. I don't want her to view me as someone who isn't capable of helping, who isn't capable of being a leader. But I finally settled on being like, yeah, no, I'm in a lot of pain today.
Yeah.
And she said, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I hope you feel better. And we just kind of changed the subject and went on with our day. But I think that small step of her not like being in abject horror about the fact that I wasn't feeling good, and still, she changed the subject to something she needed,
Sure.
which to me tells me that, oh, she does think I'm capable of helping her, even though I'm not perfect.
Right. What if we changed the narrative in our culture to say that even leaders have days where you just can't give 100%? And what if we started setting that example to say, we're not robots, we're human, and life happens, and pain happens, and chronic illness happens, and some days we're just not going to have 60, 70, 80, 90, 100% to give. And 50% is okay. Like, I don't think that that makes you weak. There is so much more to being a leader than showing up and pretending like you're a robot. It's just not realistic. And I think that culture that we've created in our society is a big reason that people struggle so much and struggle in silence so often. I mean, I think I said this in one of our previous podcasts, but when Twitch died, the guy who was, I think he was the DJ for Ellen, right? The Ellen show. I remember there were so many people online saying, I've known Twitch my whole life, or I've interacted with Twitch for, years, and he's the happiest guy I know. And people were taken by surprise. And I think even his wife has come out to say he didn't want to look weak. He, didn't want to talk about his mental health struggles because he had this persona that he was just this happy, happy man. And inside he was struggling more than anybody could ever imagine. And I blame that 100% on the culture that we've created in our society.
Yeah, I definitely think that it takes a certain type of strength to be vulnerable and
Yeah.
to be honest about how you're feeling.
Oh, 100.
And I would love to see that narrative flipped of like,
Yeah.
you're here today. You're being honest about how you're feeling, but you are still giving your all, even though it may be 50% of what your typical all is.
Yeah.
It's 100% of what you can give that day.
Amen.
And that should, I feel like that should create a confidence in us that
Yeah.
we are so much more capable than we give ourselves credit for.
100%. That constant go, 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 I have to give 100% when I don't have it is 100% what leads to burnout and what leads to chronic illness burnout for a lot of us. Yeah, that's rough. I don't I don't know how the narrative changes because there's so many moving aspects, and us with chronic illness, I guess I don't want to speak for everybody. I guess for me, I have all of these symptoms and I have all of these appointments, and it's not always mental health. Like sometimes it's physical health and it's pain and it's that I can't accomplish X, Y, and Z because I'm hurting today. And for me, it's so hard for me to find what I'm going to complain about, right? Because I want to vent and I want to have this like level of vulnerability with family or friends. But at some point, it feels like I'm constantly just like a negative Nancy, and one day somebody will be like, "Oh, how are you feeling?" I'm like, "Oh, I have so much pain." And then the next day I'm like, "Oh, my anxiety's so bad." And then the next day I'm like, "I'm just really depressed over this," or "I'm angry," or whatever. And you just feel like you get in these ruts of like, "Oh, all I'm talking about is like how sad or how much pain I'm in." For me, I can't find that level of vulnerability or that balance that I feel like makes sense. And so instead, I just do what I've been doing all week for like the last 2 weeks. And I just seclude myself from everybody and I don't talk to anybody because I feel like I'm negative. I just don't want to do it anymore. And again, like that is such a culture thing for us too.
Yeah, and I think that's where the importance of mental health professionals come into play.
Yeah.
I think they're just as valuable as your endosurgeon and your pelvic floor PT.
Yep.
They, I mean, if you don't have mental health, how are you gonna how are you gonna make your appointments? How are you gonna attend them? You know? And so I think having someone as a sounding board that you can go and you can just be, for lack of a better term, negative
Mhm.
with,
Yeah.
and then you can go to your family and you can maybe start a gratitude journal or a positivity journal and write one or two positive things a day down,
Yeah.
and you're getting it out on both ends that way
Sure.
without feeling like you're constantly bogging the same people down over and over again.
Right. Right. I don't know. We haven't talked too much about counseling and stuff like that between you and I. But for me, I fought counseling to no end. It took me being on the verge of not being on this earth anymore to push my husband to say, like, you have got to get help or something has to change. And so
Mhm.
I finally took counseling seriously and I've been doing counseling weekly. I've only missed maybe a handful of weeks over the last year and a half. And for me, I think I fought it for so long because we go to the doctors and they say, oh, it's in your head. Oh, you're making this up. Oh, it's anxiety. Oh, it's depression, whatever it is. And so I internalized that to some degree. And I kept telling myself, if I give into counseling, they win, right? They were right to some degree. It is in my head. And I'm here to tell you if you are sitting in that today, that could not be so much farther from the truth. Every time somebody has surgery and they say, okay, well, I've had surgery, now what? Or I've had surgery and now my symptoms are coming back, or whatever the situation is, my first response to people is, are you seeing a counselor? Have you visited with a psychiatrist? And it is not negative at all. It has been game changing.
Yeah, I would agree. I haven't been in therapy for quite a few years,
Hmm.
but I attended therapy from age 15 to 23.
Oh, wow.
So a pretty significant
Yeah.
amount of time before I even knew I had endo.
Yeah.
And I made a binder. I attended like DBT, EMDR, CBT, all the things. So
Right.
I've got a really huge tool belt that I'm able to use myself, even though I'm not necessarily going to a therapist right now.
Sure.
I wouldn't be opposed to it. I would just have to find the right one. I'm rather picky.
Yes.
But even though I'm not going anymore, I still have all of these tools that I can bring out for myself. And
Mhm.
I find that it makes such a huge difference.
Right.
And I think even starting this journey of learning more about how my body has reacted to having endo
Hmm.
has been eye-opening.
Yeah.
Because I remember my first pelvic floor physical therapy appointment, I cried.
Yeah.
And, you know, and she told me, well, we hold a lot of emotions in our pelvis.
Yes.
And yours is really tight.
Yep.
So, and super tense.
Yep.
And so I had to be very hyper aware of what my emotions were doing for the first few months I was attending pelvic floor physical therapy. I literally had to do like progressive muscle relaxation. I had to
Right.
chew minty gum and drink ice water to keep myself grounded. Um, and, but once I was able to get over that hill, out of that really deep, deep valley, I realized that even my body started to feel better.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like I was so shocked because, and I think, like you said, it's so difficult because so many of us are told it's in your head. The
Yeah.
pain's in your head, you're being dramatic, and then you get a diagnosis of like complex regional pain syndrome.
Yep.
And then people are like, oh, well, yeah, of course it's in your head. But
Yep.
what's really happened is that your body's been in pain for so long that your brain's been rewired. It's not that you have faulty cognitive functioning. You don't have, you know, your perception of pain has been physically changed.
Right.
Your nerves
Yep.
have been changed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's so important to emphasize the fact that our brain and our body are so interconnected, and just because something seems out of reach for someone else doesn't mean it's a mental issue.
Right. It's funny that you bring that up because I got diagnosed with CRPS with my current endo surgeon that I'm having surgery with in a couple weeks. And it has been like the biggest topic of discussion around my house and with my counselor recently. I was telling her that I don't know why, but I'm so hung up on CRPS coming off my chart and not being a diagnosis that I still have at the beginning of 2025. And I could not put my finger on why I had such a problem with it. And I think you just answered that question for me. It's so much, it's the trauma that I've been through and the fear that another physician is going to see that on my chart and disregard my pain.
Hmm. Yeah, because I had to struggle with that too. I
Yeah.
saw that on my chart, and I even remember messaging my surgeon,
Mm-hmm.
and the surgeon was like, "Oh, well, I don't want you to feel labeled in any way. I can take it off of your chart, but here's the explanation, here's the breakdown."
Yeah.
And then talking to my pelvic floor PT and doing research beyond like just superficial understanding of it. I was
Right.
like, oh, well, this actually, and even talking to this pain specialist that worked with my surgeon, I was like, oh, this actually really does fit what I'm experiencing.
Yeah, it
And
does.
I'm not crazy. And
Yeah.
this diagnosis isn't telling me I'm crazy. It's just a way to explain to insurance that like, yeah, I really have been affected
Yeah.
by endo
Yeah.
in a severe way
So true.
that is life altering.
Yeah.
But
Oh, that
yeah,
word.
it's huh?
That word life altering is hard.
Yeah, it's accurate though.
It is very accurate. It is just one of those words that comes along with this journey that that's a hard, that is profound grief.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize that having a chronic condition causes you to grieve. You do, you have to go through all the stages of grief in order to come to the conclusion of like, this is my life now. How am I going to make the best of it?
So true.
And people don't understand that when you're angry or when you're sad or when you're bargaining. Like, if I do this diet or I don't exercise this way, maybe I'll feel better. Maybe it'll fix everything. If I take this supplement, like the lady on Instagram said, maybe I'll feel better. And then when none of that works, and you finally come to the stage of acceptance, you then have to build it, or it felt like to me like I had to build my life from the ground up again.
I don't even know if I would call it acceptance. I don't know that I've genuinely accepted it. And I don't know that most people that we get to have these conversations with and that trust us enough to tell us their deepest, darkest fears and griefs, I don't know that I could call it acceptance. I think it's just, I don't even know what word I would use. I think,
Complacency.
yeah, I might even go as far as to say like, it's like a very dark depression of an anger. I think anger. That's a good word. I've been using this word a lot and I really hate the word. I don't like the color red. I don't like anger. People gift me things that are red and I like donate them because I just don't like the color red. I think it's so I don't know. I equate it with anger and I don't like anger, but it's such a good word to describe how you feel with endo and how you put together all the pieces of grief and a new life for yourself, that it can leave you very angry to say, I've done X, Y, and Z. I've done everything that everybody said. I've had multiple surgeries and I'm still stuck. And that was one of the things I had posted on my personal social media page at the beginning of this month, because it's also North Texas Giving Day month. And so I had said, I struggle so much with just like pure anger because my life is so different than what I ever envisioned it would be. And I never thought that I would ever heal from that. Yeah.
I think I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah.
I do definitely. I mean, there are days where I'm like, I can do this. I'm managing just fine and I'm in a good place.
Yeah.
And yes, I have endo, but I'm fully capable.
Sure.
And then there are like on those hard days where I'm like, I don't know how much longer I can do this.
Right.
I am so sorry.
It's okay.
Someone just turned the light off on me.
Oh no. That's funny.
Oh, let me fix that real quick. Sorry.
It's okay.
What I get for going somewhere quiet. Um, yeah, then there's days where I'm like, yeah, I don't know how else I'm gonna go on.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know if I can stand up straight.
Yeah.
And then when it happens for multiple days, I'm like, well, like is this my new normal?
Right.
So I guess then yeah, there's a re-grieving process.
Oh yeah.
Probably every single month.
Yeah.
For me at least.
Yeah. I think that's probably what a lot of our community struggles with. I think for me, that has been a big topic of discussion lately, is that grief is really hard. Like in of itself is just extremely challenging, right? On top of your chronic illness and everything else you have to deal with on a daily basis. And so my psychiatrist asked me at every visit, if I'm struggling with, suicidal thoughts, have I created a plan? Am I, going to act on this plan? And I never know the right answer to give her. And so my most recent answer has been, I want to be on this earth. I want to make memories with my husband. I want to see so badly my niece and nephew graduate and get married and live a beautiful life. And if I'm not here, I get to see none of that. My niece is too, and would not remember me. And that's why I haven't given up, but it is so hard to keep pushing when life doesn't change in the good. It only gets worse for some of us. And my answer to them has been that if the outcome of my surgery this next time around is anything like it was in 2022, and I wind up with another diagnosis or I get worse, I won't survive that. And that is like, it is so hard because you want to fight so hard, but there is only so much one human can take. And that's been my belief of life since Robin Williams passed away. Like there is only so much that you can take of your life changing and you changing and the diagnosis changing you and you having no control over what it's doing to you. And there's no cure, right? So like it's not like,
Yeah.
hey, in a month you're going to get this treatment and you're going to be all better. I'm going on my third surgery in 5 years and life looks way worse than it did. And I, at some points, question like, did I make a mistake having my first surgery? Did I open a can of worms that maybe I shouldn't have? And I don't know if I will be here for Christmas, even though I fought so hard to be here last Christmas, right? And that is the piece that I feel like our community misses talking about so much.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would agree. And I wish that that piece was viewed as equally as important as finding a cure.
100%.
Because who knows when that cure is going to come.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's invaluable to have one
Yeah, of course.
because we all want to be better, but the issue comes with what do we do in the meantime? What do we do in that in between of like, oh yeah, we're doing all this research all of a sudden, or we're trying to get this research done about endo and then actually receiving a viable cure.
Might notice like a change in how Kendall and I look. We had some technical difficulties and are finishing off the podcast on another day. So, do you want to pick up where you left off?
Yes. I think I was talking about my first surgery
Yes.
where I had ablation done with just a regular OB-GYN. And I remember her telling me in the office before the procedure that it would be a cure. I'd be fine. And then I even have a recording of her coming to talk to me after the surgery and saying that she thinks I'm going to feel a lot better. And then, you know, she said she wanted to put me on Oralissa and that would be a game changer because it's this new exciting drug for endometriosis.
Mm.
And, you know, just to come back and see her when I wanted to have babies, because that's when we'd start to worry about that. But I did some research on Oralissa and I realized that that was not something that I needed to take, that it actually really probably wouldn't help me.
Yeah.
And then I remember having this sinking feeling after actually doing research into how beneficial ablation is
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that I basically just allowed her to damage my inside. And I would not feel any better. I knew I wouldn't feel any better. I had maybe a month of relief, but by the time I got my first period after surgery, I obviously wasn't cured like she said I was going to be.
Yeah. Oh, friend, I'm so sorry. That's hard. I I'm curious, like when you were doing all this research, because I didn't have ablation. Luckily, I just wound up like fate took me the second surgery I had. Well, my first surgery as an adult, where I made a decision about where I was going. I just happened to fall in the hands of a gynecologist that knew how to do excision. He didn't do like the best job, right? Because he's not like super duper trained, but I consider myself lucky in that I didn't fall into the hands of somebody that did ablation. So I'm just curious, like, what kind of toll did that take on your mental health as you're doing this research and going, oh my gosh, were you thinking like I've wasted a lot of time? Like, do I come back from this? Like, what does that do to your head?
Well, it made me a lot less trusting of doctors.
Yeah,
I feel like growing up as a child, I had a really great pediatrician, so I developed like a super strong trust in doctors, and I thought what they told me was true and accurate because it always had been
sure.
as a child.
Yeah,
Um,
that's how it should be.
yeah, it is how it should be, exactly. And so I found that I was super disillusioned, and
Yeah,
I still definitely carry that feeling. Even I guess that was in 2018. So six years later, I still carry that feeling. I felt very alone
Mhm.
because I know that people expected me to feel better after the surgery. And when I didn't, I almost felt foolish because I trusted someone before really researching about ablation.
Yeah,
I felt dumb that I didn't, in all my research about everything in life, I felt dumb that I didn't think to do that before I actually agreed to a surgery. But she had so much confidence about her
yeah,
that I didn't even feel like it was necessary. And I had no clue what endo was at the time.
yeah,
Um, I also felt a little betrayed.
yeah,
And it definitely contributed to, I think, some sort of depression.
yeah.
There were other contributing factors, but I think when you're promised that you're going to be cured and that you're going to feel so much better and your life is going to change, and then it doesn't, and then you find out that you were lied to, it's like, well, you know what? There's nothing else I can do. I'm stuck with this for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
And at that point, she had also told me if I didn't have kids by the age of 25, it would be very difficult to have any.
Oh my gosh.
So, and that's one of the most important things to me. I've wanted children since I was a little tiny girl.
Yeah.
And so having the possibility of that taken away, I felt like I wasn't as worthy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a
Hard.
lot of feelings and emotions.
Yeah, I can imagine. So often, you're new to the nonprofit, but we've been having these conversations for over a year now. And so I have had a lot of interactions where people come to us and say, like, hey, I'm going to a gynecologist, and they're super excited for their surgery. And we want to be supportive. Like, that's our number one goal, right? Like, that's always what we want to do is we want to support you in your decision. That's your decision. You've picked your physician, you've picked your surgery. We're happy for you that you're getting surgery because a lot of people don't get that opportunity.
Mhm.
However, in the back of our minds, we do struggle with wanting to make sure everybody is with a specialist. because we know what the outcome is going to be with a typical gynecologist. All of us on the board had our first surgery with a gynecologist, and I can tell you that hands down, I think every single one of us regrets the first decision we made. We've learned a lot from it, and I think every decision you make, there's a lesson to be learned, right? Good or bad. And I think we all went down another path to be able to be where we are now, right? Um, However, like it breaks my heart whenever people are like, hey, I'm going to see a gynecologist and they don't really have a plan, or they're doing ablation, or I don't really know what's going to be the outcome of the surgery. They haven't done any scans. They're not answering these questions. And my heart just aches because I know the toll that it takes on your brain after surgery when you get promised X, Y, and Z. And I know that, unfortunately, I know that the surgeon probably has that OB-GYN has good intentions, but they just aren't trained well enough to be able to identify endo or to treat it properly. And that's, again, like, I think everybody has good intentions. I don't think anybody has ill will intentions on purpose. It's just a product of the system that we unfortunately have to function in. Um, but I understand the heartache that comes after that, and the depression and the grief and the, oh my gosh, I've been duped. I'm still as bad off as I was, and now I've spent all this money. And for a lot of people, they can't get another surgery because all that money already went down the drain, and they can't turn around and spend another, I mean, let's be honest, like my next surgery that I'm having in a couple of weeks is costing me almost $9,000 cash. And I'm thankful that we have that. But that's not the case for everybody. But I don't have $18,000 to pay $9,000 now and turn around in January and do it all over again. So it's hard, and my heart breaks for everybody because we've been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Mm.
that's another reason why what we do is so important, is because if no one's going to talk about it, how is anyone going to know what they should and shouldn't do for their bodies? You know, at one point we didn't even talk about our periods,
Yeah.
and people were just left so in the dark. What do I do? And they felt ashamed. And I feel like that's become more commonplace.
Yeah.
And I feel like endo could be in normal conversation with, of course, people that we feel comfortable talking to. We don't have to walk up to a stranger and tell them we have endo. I mean, we could if we wanted to be
Of
that bold.
course.
I'm personally not, but I found that talking to people and being more open about it has helped my mental health significantly,
Yes.
because there were definitely many times where I didn't want to talk to anyone about anything.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get out of my bed, but I had to make myself. So having people to talk to and share information with definitely helps give me a purpose
Yes.
and a reason to get up out of bed.
I agree. I we did a walk in Dallas. Was it last week or a week ago? Oh, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
It was last week, I think.
Last week on Saturday.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's been a week already.
Yes.
And I don't know if you were standing where I was at the walk, but a lady had come to the walk. She was newly post-op, and she saw it on Instagram, and she couldn't walk, but she decided to get up and get ready for the first time and come out to meet us and just support us and show her support. Um, I always get so emotional when I think about this story. But she came up and she said something to the effect of, I don't know anybody who has endo and I feel so alone. And I looked at her and I said, well, friend, you just met 170 some odd people who have endo, and we know what it's like. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, we have a private group on Facebook and it has 170 some odd people and we all have endo and we all know what you're going through. And she was like, this is awesome. And it just like made my heart so happy because there are so many people out there that are feeling so alone, and endo and like chronic illness takes such a toll on your body and your mental health, and people struggle with depression. I mean, the stats that I gave at the beginning of the podcast, I mean, those are real stats, and they're real people, and they're real people that are out alone with nobody they know that they can talk to, that their life looks like theirs. Um, that's the whole reason F is here. I was looking around and I was like, where is there somebody like me? I need somebody like me. And there wasn't any resource. And I wanted people's stories to look different than what mine looked like because I know the heartache that it brought. And I think if I could just tell people one thing is find your community. Like it really does make such a big difference. I'm not going to say that like we're going to cure your depression or we're going to cure your anxiety because that's just years of trauma that we go through, unfortunately. But I'll tell you that life is a lot easier.
Yeah, it is. I think for me, the two biggest things that have helped with my mental health have been a community and purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Well, this was good. I hope that anybody out here listening reaches out if you need support, if you need a virtual hug, if you need an in-person hug. We have so many in-person events coming up, and we would love to just give you the biggest bear hug and let you know that life is going to be okay. It might not be okay today, but by golly, we have plenty of flashlights and batteries, and we will see you all the way out the other side of the tunnel. So, did you want to add
Yes.
anything else?
No, I think that's about the gist of it is yeah, we all carry flashlights and extra batteries.
Yeah,
There is a light somewhere in the tunnel, and we will hold the light if we have to.
100%. Whew. I'm going to post some resources at the end of this podcast. I'm not going to read them out loud, but I'm going to post them in writing. So if you are looking for a hotline or some resources to help you with your mental health, please, please, please reach out to somebody. I cannot stress this enough. In the darkest times is when you should be reaching out the most, even though I know it's the hardest thing to do. And if you're not with a counselor or a psychiatrist or both, I'm a big advocate for both, like just drop the stigma. It's not. I want everybody who is struggling to get with a care provider that can help you because life is hard. Life's, and sometimes you just need a little extra support. And I think so many of us that have been through this trauma of chronic illness and endo and being dismissed for years, we're not just going to get over that tomorrow. We definitely need a little bit of help to get through that. And there is no shame in reaching out for help. We want you here. You have a purpose in this life. You bring so much joy to this world. And sometimes we just need a little help to let our light shine. So if you need to find a provider, please reach out to us and we'd be more than happy to help you find somebody. And that wraps up our podcast, and we hope you all have a great weekend.